Jeremy Skinner here with Atomic Dojo. We're talking to Greg Souders, the head coach and owner of Standard Jiu Jitsu, a gym with quite a number of high-level competitors doing things a different way to other Jiu Jitsu gyms. Um, so Greg, just to start out, I actually was just interested in getting to know a little bit about your background leading up to and then from the start of when you did jujitsu, just to because one of the things that I find
Oh yeah,
interesting about different higher level athletes and competitors is not just about like, okay, like what are they doing in jiu-jitsu, but where do they come from? Because oftentimes that influences sort of the direction they take the sport.
yeah, for sure. So I started jiu-jitsu way back in 2004. I was 19. I had a basic interest in mixed martial arts. I didn't know jiu-jitsu was a separate thing. I thought mixed martial arts was just like, fighting. So
Yeah.
I watched Pride, I watched UFC, and I was actually working at a video store when a guy came in one night asking me about a local school. And I was like, oh, I want to try that shit. So basically, the next day, I found the school that he was asking about. I showed up. I saw little kids grappling with the gi on. And I was like, what is that? And they were like, that's jujitsu. And I was like, I want to try that shit. So I jumped on the mat. It was a Tuesday night. I loved it immediately. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, after the first day, I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I just kept showing up. Um, and I literally been on the mats every day since. My original intention for training was to be a competitor, and that's how I started my journey. I started off right away, training 6, 7 days a week, like everybody else, two times a day. The whole story that everyone tells you. Um, and then up about around the purple belt level, I had a significant injury where I ruptured my C5, C6 ligament, and the disc burst, and I got some spinal cord damage. I couldn't use my left arm for about a year, so that
Wow.
took me out of the sport and then or out of the competitive scene anyway. I was took about a year off to heal that, and then my arm started working a little bit better. So I started getting back on the mats again, and Lloyd Irvin gave me a coaching role at his gym. He basically said, "Hey man, I think competition's over for you. Why don't you, if you still want to stay in the sport, why don't you shift your focus and do something else?" So I shifted towards teaching, and I didn't know coaching, but just teaching, and just regular training. Went back to my 2 day schedule, but I was no longer a competitor. I just taught. So I left his team in 2013 when everybody else did.
Yeah.
And then I opened my own school in 2014, and that started my coaching journey.
So what did so I guess to get a bit of an idea then, at that stage, what was your approach to coaching? And then sort of like roughly sort of like what were you looking like what sort of sources were you looking towards for coaching at like
Yeah. So,
specifically at that time?
yeah. And so when I was with Lloyd, we at the time believed that it was a repetitive movement that caused skill to grow or to build skill. So that's what we did. We did high speed, high repetition drilling of all the stuff that we were interested in. And I didn't know the difference. I didn't know anything about training. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
At the time, I was actually reading a researcher named Anders Ericsson who studied elite performance in general. He had a lot to say about the nature of practice, specifically the differences between, let's say, we got two major types. I think he had three in the book, but like naive practice or purposeful practice was there's three. So there's naive practice, purposeful practice, and deliberate practice. And he made a distinction between those things. Even though he didn't really talk about drilling specifically, he did talk about being intentional, so to speak, in practice. So the difference between, let's say, naive practice, where you and a buddy would go out and just do something and have fun, versus purposeful practice, where
So is there a distinction there, like, and between, say, for example, two buddies going out versus turning up and just doing mindless repetitions, or are they sort of lumped in like the same sort of category of sort of naive practice?
well, so the repetition thing has nothing to do with Anders Ericsson or researchers like him.
Okay.
Um, the nature of repetition and how we use it to build skill is looked at differently through different coaching lenses, different theories of information, and how we gain it and how we use it. Anders Ericsson really didn't discuss the nature of it. What he sort of focused on is time in deliberate practice, and what he meant by that is when I go into practice for any time scale, I'm I know what I'm working on. Either I create that, which is what he called purposeful practice. So if a person goes into a practice of any subject with an idea of what they want, that's purposeful. Deliberate, and generally how he defined it, was an expert giving you things to do that have a known effect. And again, that's loose. Okay, there's lots of work he's written, but I'm trying to give you the easy version.
Yep.
And so that was kind of where I was when I when I started my own school. I didn't really know much more than his work, and that's all I had read then. So what I did was I just started. I didn't feel confident, right? Because I was only doing what I was told. The typical warm up, the typical drilling session, the typical situational sparring, the typical sparring, just like everybody else. But I was more curious. I was like, how does this thing actually work? If I want to make good students, how does learning work? And that's when I started doing my research and I ran into CLA.
I mean, like, and that makes sense as well. Like, when we go to approach jiu-jitsu in general, it's like we can just do exactly what someone has shown us before. But I think like a lot of us are much more interested in, well, let's question it. Is that actually the best way to do things and try and continue to evolve? And it makes sense to do that with coaching practices as well. Try and get like, look at like, I guess, like different sources of information and try and, yeah, go from there. I guess like, so one of the questions I actually wanted to start out with is just, and it might be that you draw the distinction between like maybe coach, instructor. Do you have different distinctions between things like that, or are you just coach and athlete and
I mean,
cool?
I could. I mean, the language I use is coach athlete relationship. So the way that I see a coach is as a basically a designer of a practice environment. So my job as the coach is to know the sport, is to know the athlete, the direction we're going, and then how humans behave. So it's almost like a multifaceted position, right? So if and I'm going to say this in a ridiculous way, but please forgive me, but I have to use this language. If I'm a human teaching another human how to do something, how does that relationship work? First, how do humans learn? And how do humans affect other humans? That's a deep question, but that sits at the nature of what we're doing. So if we don't understand, at least at some level, or at least have an idea of how that works, starting that practice is going to be a little bit muddy. It's muddy anyway, but it's going to be even more muddy if we don't have a philosophical basis or a scientific basis or some basis to start from.
So then more specifically, do you have a more specific definition for what you think a coach's role is in jiu-jitsu specifically?
It's no different than any other sport. So there's nothing special about jiu-jitsu. It's a grappling sport, like wrestling, judo, Greco-Roman wrestling. It's just a sport. It's a way that humans engage in physical practice and physical expression as it relates to whatever they're trying to accomplish with their bodies. It's human behavior through and through.
Okay.
Now, there are things that are special about maybe one sport versus another sport, or one behavior versus another behavior. But either way, a coach's job in jiu-jitsu is like any other coach. It's to understand their subject deeply and understand how their training interventions or their practices or the things they do in practice affect the athlete's performance.
Okay. Um, so on that then, because there's like in other sort of like podcast interviews, things you've done, you've got a nice quote that I actually do like is that coaches in jiu-jitsu don't know how to do their job.
Yeah.
Um, could you elaborate on that a little bit more and as well as like I guess talk more about specifically, I guess like yeah, like what they're doing wrong, what can they modify about their approach to do things like what you would say would be the correct way, or like to actually do their job properly.
Yeah. So the first thing is they don't know what their job is, right? They don't know what their position is. They don't know what a coach is supposed to do day to day, week to week, month to month in order to help their athletes change. They have no idea how that works. Typically, the coach in our sport, because of the traditions present in our sport, is I go into a gym, my coach shows me things, and then when I start my gym, I do what my coach showed me, and it just goes on ad infinitum. And there is no academic basis to our sport. We're a privatized sport. We're a pedestrian sport. We don't have any monetary support outside of people's consumption of our products. So it creates this really weird environment where I think the actual role of a coach or instructor, I like to use the word coach, gets lost because we haven't defined it, right? And even more deeply so, that professional coaches in other sports actually study human behavior. They study the effects of practice. They study the effects of stress. They study the effects of rest. They study the effect of language as we communicate. But the average jiu-jitsu coach has no knowledge of any of those things. So I mean, we're all shooting in the dark, but they're really shooting. They're shooting in the dark with blinders on and mitts on their hands. They don't know what's happening.
I
Um,
completely agree.
and so that's what I mean when I say that. Someone can accidentally be a good coach. That's real. Like, there are some people wake up that become Picasso, but I mean, like, um, we need a process to help coaches develop, just like we have a process to help athletes develop. And so that's something that's missing in our sport. And that's a role that I've tried to take on really unintentionally. It just kind of fell into it.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's when I look to try and when I look at like coaching in jiu-jitsu and you try and compare it to any other sport that actually like any other high performance sport, it really is quite amateur. Just even like the general idea in jiu-jitsu that the coach has to be the best athlete, like the best competitor in the room is kind of ridiculous. Like if you look at basketball, the coach isn't the best player on like a basketball team. He's not even better than the worst player on the team, but it's like so it's like, okay, well, if he's not even better than the worst player, it's like like he provides some sort of value other than just showing like, oh, I'm just going to show you how to do your thing, but I just happen to do it better. So then, like, I'm speaking from that experience. Like, there clearly is much more to it than just show the person how to do the sport better.
Yes. I mean, think about it. Like, just think of the daily, like a part of my daily routine, right? So when I get up in the morning, I go to teach a class, right? I have to have an intention for the class. What are we doing today and why are we doing it? When I have that intention, I have to ask myself, what actions do my athletes have to take with each other, knowing each of my athletes, so that these actions that we take have a positive effect on their net growth, whether as it leads to performance. I have to, again, I have to know my individual athletes and what moves them and what doesn't move them, their weaknesses, their strengths. So I have this catalog of who these people are as people. And then I have to have this sort of catalog of practice tasks, things that we will do. And I have to do this each day. And I have to know where we're going. And not only do I have to know where we're going, but I have to know the sport itself. I have to know what is jiu-jitsu and how does it work. And then I have to know how do humans engage in behavior and how does it work. There's just so much that I have to try to put together to try to create some sort of functional process that creates this outcome. I mean, it takes so much energy, you know. And most people are, like I said, just show, hey guys, I'll show you this today. Step one, step two, step three. I mean,
They're not,
they're not
yeah,
engaging in the process at all.
they're rather than actually having a coaching program, they're showing up and teaching a class and then they're getting to the next day and then they're teaching a class and there's not, and this is actually one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is like, let's say like standard jiu-jitsu disappears, your or whatever notes, anything that you've got written down disappears suddenly. It's like, okay, you start a gym tomorrow. What is going to be the how would you start out your coaching program in terms of like your like start planning things out? Would you like do you hone in, for example, specifically on okay, year round, we're thinking ADCC rules, like, and then like what does like going from there like sort of look like?
Okay, so my personal view of jujitsu and or grappling, I want to say grappling because it's going to be more specific,
Yeah.
is I am agnostic to rules and points and scoring systems. So
Okay.
I think grappling is just a basic human action. It's something that we do with our bodies to achieve the outcome that we use it for. So we can use the gripping, grasping, twisting, lifting, squeezing, hugging motions of the human body to affect the other person. Now, since it's two human bodies and they have a structure that we are aware of, and we understand how the structure interacts with one another, we can teach jujitsu only based on that. We don't have to teach it relative to a rule set when we first start.
Yeah.
I have to teach you how to use my head, my arms, my legs, my hips, my shoulders to grasp yours, throw you to that floor, and create effects that lead to the ultimate end of our sport, which is submission. And again, taking all non-grappling tactics away, like punching, kicking, biting, scratching, those things, and all using grappling tactics, we don't need to start with a rule set. We have to start with the physical aspects of two humans engaging in a system for the purpose of controlling and submitting each other. That's what I focus on first. We layer rules into that as constraints.
Okay.
So let's say we're working on basic skills like putting someone on the floor, holding them on the floor, or moving limbs out of the way and getting behind somebody. We do that from as many variable ways and novel ways as we can until we start to see consistency and outcome. Now, then what we would do is we would take the rules as an extra constraint and see if we can perform those basic skills in that rule set. So let's say we have 6 minutes to do it. These actions are more meaningful than these actions based on the scoring system. Do the skills that we've already developed physically, how do they act when we put them into that system?
Yeah.
That's how I see it. And then, so because what that does allows us to change. So let's imagine we build those physical skills, we apply it to the ADCC rule set, but then we don't want to do ADCC anymore. We want to do IBJJF rules. So then we take those same skills that we have built based on the way two human bodies engage, agnostic of rule set, and now we put it through the filter of IBJJF. We get a new product. Now we get the similar grappling actions, but the way we make decisions, the strategies we use start to change. Now, to be more nuanced, I'm going to say one more thing and I'll be quiet. the system does change. So your skills are not really isolated things. They will change based on the constraints that are present when you're using them. So your skills will become different and coordinate differently if you are pressured by the ADCC rule set or if you are pressured by the IBJJF rule set. It will change the system again.
Okay. Well, so with that then, because you're talking about, okay, like we have the fundamental movements of how we do our, or like, the movements of how we do our sport, and then the idea is we put them through a filter of different rule sets. Then with that in mind, like when we look at, say, the timeline of like training at Standard Jiu Jitsu over the course of, say, 12 months, 2 years, let's say, what does that like approximately look like? Like, do you have like a program sort of built out over that, like that
Yeah,
length of time, or is it going
I
to
do.
be from, okay, cool. Or is it like, and I'm assuming then you have like preparation for different competitions within that, depending on whether it's ADCC trials coming up, IBJJF Worlds, things like that. Would you be able to speak a
Yeah,
little bit more about that?
for sure. Yeah. So for the first 2 years, we don't worry about anything like that. So I have an intention for the early practice. Early practice is 2 to 5 years.
Okay.
So the first 2 years, let's keep it short. The first 2 years is based on building the capacity to train for an hour in a focused manner at least 4 days a week. So in the first 2 years, that's the first thing we're developing. The physical and psychological, and I'm only separating those because I don't know how to put them together with words. The physical and psychological capacities of the individual to train for an hour at least 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And then the second thing we worry about in the program is while developing those capacities, teaching them how to play the game all the way from the feet to submission. And so we expose them to situations from the standing, guarded, and pinned situation that teaches them the flow. And by flow, I mean the direction of the game from feet to submission. And that's what we focus on first. Can we get them to physically do this in a consistent manner in the face of variation and novelty? Uh, and then we start worrying about the individual goals or the competitive goals.
How do you actually then, based on, I guess, like experience levels, divide up the training room? Like you said, you've got the first 2 years there. Then is there a second program that like, athletes will graduate into after that? Is there multiple like levels to that? What is that like roughly looking like when you sort of divide those things up within a training room?
So, in a general sense, I just have a space for what we would consider types of individuals. So we have the foundations program. This is basically individuals from 1 year to 2 years, but that's the assumption when designing the program. That doesn't mean that you could come to my gym to do the foundations program, but the way we set the constraints and the expectations and the standards we set for the students have to do with the intentions of that class, which is to build the general capacities and the basic understanding of how the game is played. And so that's in the foundations program. Then we have the all levels. Now, the all levels is where we start to expand those skills into higher levels of variation and exposure to higher levels of novelty. And there's an expectation of previous experience. So that class is basically about taking what we originally are building and basically challenging it with a myriad of different constraints, situations, challenges, things like that. We just open up the demands on the athlete. And we have a higher standard for operation in that class. And then finally, the competitors. And the competitors are solely focused on the act of competing. So that means the training schedule is based on stress, rest, adaptation principles. It's based on who's there, what the tournament coming up is. The whole training system is focused around the act of competing.
Okay.
And people
So
can fluctuate in and out of these classes as they see fit.
so with that then, just on when we're talking about building skills and going back to the role of coaching as well. Um, One of the things that I think is important as a coach is through the course of, say, 12 months, let's say we have someone that is new to the training program. It's of my opinion that they need to be exposed to the different areas of grappling over the course of that 12 months. Like you can't get to the end of the 12 month, like you hear about it some gyms where like, oh, we focus on this skill for a whole month. Or like
Crazy.
I find this insane. I'm like, so you're going to
Insane.
tell me that someone gets to the end of 12 months and there's going to be a major area of grappling that they've never even heard of before? Like
Yeah.
so the way that I see it as well is like, so a coach's role is like, okay, need to introduce athletes to different areas of grappling, but it is then, do you find that then it is up to the competitors on more specifically on what direction to take their skills in outside of this? I'm sure there's a bit of like a harmonious relationship where you're like, look, like you do need to take certain skills in this area, but then like also allowing them if they want to hyperfixate on other areas than others. Like I was just curious to like hear your thoughts about more of that relationship between like I guess like athletes sort of like having a certain like predisposition towards like certain skills, things that they just happen to really hone in on, as well as like I guess the coach's role in either encouraging that, tempering that, things like this.
Yeah. So the first thing is in that developmental process, once somebody starts taking the training more seriously, we start to introduce and teach the idea of responsibility for yourself. So I'm one person, try to design a program for 100 people. That is very, very difficult, and really it's not optimized. So part of the way we get around that is by teaching individuals how to do what I do for themselves.
Yeah.
So I do it for a group, you have to do it for you. And we communicate over that process as we go along. But ultimately, you are going to have to take responsibility for your strengths, or recognizing your strengths, your weaknesses, and what you want to do about it. But I'm going to guide you through that process. So that's kind of how I teach my students, and we have it laid into the program for that process to be nurtured, right? So we have Mondays and Tuesday programs for the competitors, for example, are guided by me, right? So or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday morning, I would say that they're all designed by me. And then Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, those 3 days are basically the athletes get to design their own training. So we have like a mixed bag here. So we go from a highly constrained, focused, purposeful practice early in the week. And then as the week progresses on, it basically turns into athletes guiding themselves and live grappling rounds where they can constrain themselves however they want. They can focus on their tasks however they want. They can develop whatever they want. And my gym is open 24 hours, by the way. So my students can come in and train themselves whenever they'd like, as long as they're a member of our program. So we encourage that. So yes, we allow it to happen. We try to encourage it to happen. And I try my best to guide the process when the athletes need my help.
Okay, that's interesting because that also leads into a question I actually had for you also. It's on the nature of like athletes becoming or like competitors or sorry, not even athletes or competitors, but just students at some point becoming coaches, but then also the notion of skill and knowledge in the sport, because you can have skill in the sport but not necessarily have the knowledge, or you can take the knowledge and convert it into some sort of skill. um what does that process look like in your gym with students becoming coaches? Like, because oftentimes people will make the sort of joke with like ecological that it's just positional training, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. But where for to design practice, it's going to require some amount of knowledge. So how are the athletes or the students in your training room getting the knowledge to then be able to then try and convert that into like their own coaching abilities?
Well, the only knowledge you first need to start with, if any at all, is what is the intention of the game. You don't even need to know anything about it, other than the rules of it. A similar example would be this, and I'm going to use this. Someone will probably check me if you put this out or whatever. But there's an AI program, Alpha Zero and Alpha Go. They teach algorithms how to play chess and how to play Go. And the only thing they do with the program is they give it the rules of the game and they let it play itself. And of course, you can look at how successful these two programs are beating humans, which is insane.
Yeah,
Um,
not at this stage. It's not even close when you're looking at things like
yeah,
stockfish and all these. Yeah, it's just gotten to an insane level.
yeah. So yeah, those alpha programs are crazy. But the one interesting thing about the alpha programs is again, they're only given the rules of chess, not the strategies or tactics, just the rules, like how the pieces move, how the board's set up, this, that, and the other thing, and it plays itself. And it's the best chess player in existence. So and again, we're comparing an algorithm to a human, which it doesn't, but just get the analogy, right? And
Yeah,
so it's kind of the same thing. And if you think about it, that's how humans have started all their engagements in the world. So every sport that was ever engaged with started off with an intention. What do I want this sport to represent, and what are the rules going to be as we start to play it? And then humans engage, and as they engage, they play other humans, and results come out. We take those results and we refine them. We refine the engagements, we refine the practice task, we refine the rule set, and then we keep filtering humans through the system. And after hundreds of years of engagement, we have this bed of data, this knowledge about how this sport has been played historically. But all that knowledge started with an intention and a set of rules. And so coaches can start with that exact same thing. Coaches are different than competitors because they don't have to express this physically. They only have to express it intellectually. So their job is to create what they think would represent what they're intending to do and get other people to do it. And they have to adjust to the outcomes of those individuals, right? So it's a relationship. Um, so that's how a blue belt can become a good coach, ironically, because they only have to know their sport intellectually. They don't necessarily have to be able to perform it physically, but they do have to be sensitive to the data that they're collecting as other people become good at the sport. Just like you noted
Does make
earlier,
sense.
most coaches aren't even as good as their worst player, and they're not even close to as good as their worst player.
Yeah.
You know, so there's no black belts in basketball. Like the distance between Phil Jackson's abilities and Michael Jordan's abilities are like massive. Isn't even the word. Um, but Michael Jordan said, "I'll never be coached by anybody else." So, you know, not a bunch of anecdotes, but you get the
No, I
point.
think like anecdotes are good, and they also like I guess just give us something to look towards when we're trying to think of like comparable sort of examples.
Knowledge of and knowledge about is a distinction that we make in ecological dynamics, right? So whether it exists or not, it's a nice way to think about how the human uses information differently, right? So knowledge about would be heavily based on the idea of memory. So I can collect a bunch of facts and data about a subject, and I can regurgitate that verbally, or I can write it out, or whatever. I can give it to you. Knowledge of would be the thing you gain while engaging with the subject that has nothing to do with the facts or figures of the subject. So think about a basketball player's hand, understanding how the texture of the ball feels, how it relates to the weight. They know where it is relative to their body. We can't intellectualize that, but it's knowledge, but it's a different type. It's something that we can't really get at with the symbols we use to describe it. It's deeply embedded and bound in the relationship between me and the ball and my interactions with it. It's almost a silent type of knowledge. So there are two different buckets of how we use and what we think information is.
That makes sense. It's not maybe not quite the exact same as like the distinction I'd like to draw between knowledge and skill, but it's comparable in terms of like, okay, there is essentially the knowledge about, which is something that the coach has ideally, and
Ideally.
try and impart that onto the athlete as well. But then the knowledge of is something that maybe only the athlete has, and the coach doesn't necessarily need to have.
Sure. And knowledge of necessarily isn't skill, but it's basically whatever
Yeah,
level of relationship I built with the environment I'm interacting with.
yeah.
Knowledge of just is your exposure. Again, the silent exposure, the thing you can't articulate, you know?
Okay, a coach is going to have, say, for example, set games that they're going to set throughout the class. You have certain goals in mind with a game. What does that actually look like in terms of like you as a coach, like observing what's happening in practice and making adjustments on those different games? Um, yeah,
Yeah.
like I guess to various levels. Like do you have like say for example in your foundations program, is it at this stage would you find it's a lot more like pretty well set in terms of the games that you use, the outcomes you're sort of looking for, the goals that you have for those games?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to shift this language around a bit because I realized there's a big mistake going on because people engaging with this new idea, they're not doing the same work that I did. So when I say game and they say game, they're saying two different things. I'm only using the word game to talk about what the literature would say a small sided game. So
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu itself is a game. It's a big game we play. A
Okay.
small sided game is a shrunk down version of the bigger game. And we use these small-sided games or these shrunk-down versions to basically highlight or blind information sources, right? We're trying to manipulate the information that the athlete's engaging with to make it more meaningful and more salient to help affect their behavior. And so that's what the game is. But embedded within that are tasks, things that we're trying to do. And there are not just tasks, but other constraints present, like partner, time, temperature, all these other things within the environment. And so when I'm designing a practice or an individual game, it has all this other stuff in it. What time are we doing it for? Who are we doing it on? What tasks are we performing? Why are we performing these tasks? Why are they situated this way? And within the hour, why are they situated this way amongst each other? And within the week, why is it situated this way? So when I say game, people are using it as like technique. When I say game, I'm thinking about a piece that makes sense of a
Yeah.
greater whole, or it's a part, or it's interacting with a greater whole. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
So,
no, no, and
sorry.
I think I'm using it in the same way that you are in terms of like you were designing certain games, like not in the sense of like, oh, he's developing this game as in like someone's got a really cool Berimbolo game.
Right,
Like
right,
I
right.
think that's how like a lot of people talk about it, but like as in what you're saying, is it short-sighted games you referred to it as is like the more technical term?
I mean, we don't even in my school. It's like we don't even use this academic language, but I'm trying to use it now to try to convey how I use a literature to design my practice. So again, in the small-sided games in the literature, that's what they use to
Okay.
describe it. Um, and so yeah, we're using small-sided games to, like I said, situate the athlete.
So as a coach, and
Um,
so when you have these games and you're observing them in class, are you looking for athletes to when it plays out, for example, are you looking for an athlete to win at the game, or is there a more specific sort of outcome that you're looking like that you specifically as the coach are looking for, and then you're going to try and
yeah,
like adjust the game towards that specific outcome you're trying to develop?
yeah. I guess there are two. I could say there are two things that I'm largely looking for when I'm watching. I design a game and I'm watching people play it. So one, I'm looking for intentionality. Can they focus on the tasks and objectives that I've given them situated within that game? So
Okay.
I'm trying to train the ability to be intentional about their behavior. This is sits at the center of my philosophy, right? You're going to hear it now, right? So DeAndre just put out a walking video where he talked about the difference between elite athletes and everyone else, and he's absolutely right. I mean, that's what I teach. I teach intentionality, right? So anyway, that's it's the base of it. Can my students be intentional?
Okay.
The second thing is, as they're engaging with the other individual in this small sided game, doing these tasks and objectives, being intentional, how is it affecting them? Where are they going? How are they searching? What's happening? Positive, negative. And I'm collecting that interaction as data to determine what to do next, right? So each game, the base of it, can you intentionally engage in it? Good. Because if you can't intentionally engage in it, the effects are going to be random. If you can intentionally engage with it, we can drive those effects around. And so that's what I then use the second piece for, the data collected. As you're being intentional, driving around, looking for your stuff, what's happening to you? And then I use that to build further games.
So when you say they can't engage with it, can you give me an example of what an athlete failing to engage with it would look like? Or like as in like is it just maybe there are too many constraints for them
Yeah.
to be able to manage what is happening or
Well, that is definitely a factor, and that's something I'm very sensitive to because as I watch new people get involved in the CLA, I see that quite a bit. That's one of the big mistakes I see people perform is they're not really sure how to talk about it. So it's like too many constraints, too many explanations. It just becomes a mess. Um, so that's the thing in and of itself. So let's assume a well-designed game and the students are able to focus on it because what I'm asking them to focus on is simple. And I'll give you an example. Let's say we do something like clear the feet, step in between outside the knees. I always use this example because it's easy, it's obvious, people can see it. And also, Standard is known for guard passing. So you can see that, right? So clear feet,
yeah.
step in between outside knees. I give students that's all we're doing. We're holding that line continuously. Once you get there, stay there. If you lose it, get back. That's it.
You
Defending
definitely see
player, I have,
that specific skill played out with DeAndre a lot. Like especially when you
oh
say
yeah,
hold the line, he is fantastic with that. You watch him do that against David Stoyle, I remember this.
yeah, you have to understand that he is literally my best student. And he's not my best student because he's the best athlete. He's my best student because he's the best student. Like he takes his job very seriously. He
Yeah.
takes his stuff very seriously. Communicating with him is, well, by jujitsu anyway, is the easiest thing in the world.
I saw
Anyway,
this a lot at Aiga actually. Like when, like, say for example, we'd have matches, we come off, or we would talk about certain things leading into, or sort of like debriefing after matches, and it's like he is just laser focused. He's like, look, I'm gonna like, yeah, he's yeah, just rock solid. It's
so this
really
is why he
impressive
and
to
I
see.
actually got along. So we didn't know that we would work together. He's dating Alex. He came to visit, liked the training, got beat up by some lower belts. So he was like, damn, what are you guys doing differently? And I was like, hey man, I'll teach it to you. And I didn't know how good he was going to be as an athlete. But we have a similar intentionality. We're both very intense, we're both very dedicated. So that aspect of our personalities clicked very well. And he reflects that. It was so easy for me. It was crazy. I've had students for years, and I had never had somebody that was that willing to be a student. And that's what it was, because he didn't come with what you're seeing him with, but he came with the capacity to be like that. And once the opportunity was given to him, he took it and he was like, "Oh, this is it." Like he used to get so excited. Like he was a different guy when he first came, man. He was like just so hungry for information. He was like, "Oh, just show me," and it was great. But yeah, he's extremely good at that. Oh, one other little story, by the way, about you. So I taught DeAndre the concept of wrist pinning. We started with wrist pinning based on this idea of, well, excuse me, I taught him the action of wrist pinning through the concept of what we call limit of extension. So when he was first guard passing, he was having a difficult time with frames. He just wasn't removing frames well. And there's this idea that I have that a frame loses its push value once the arm is fully extended. And we call this concept a limit of extension. So the idea is once we get in between outside the knees and start pressuring towards the hips, you're going to get extension. We put pressure at the limit. Once the limit of that pressure is reached, we hand fight. And the hand fight, we drive all wrist grips, all connections to the hips, everything to the hips. And that's how we got DeAndre to start getting to the hips so well. And then he trained with you, and all he could focus on is you telling him to pin them to the floor. And so that he came back to the gym after, and he's like, Jeremy was talking about pinning the wrists to the floor. You know what I mean? And then he experimented with not pinning to the hips, but pinning to them to the floor. So
So
thank you for that.
actually, yeah, like so, and I remember that because like I remember as well like making the suggestion to him, and he's like, I can see how that fits in. He's like, awesome. I'm gonna start adding this in straight away. And I actually wanted to ask you about that because one of the things I feel like that gets sort of mixed up with when you say we don't drill is that, oh, that means there's no instruction of any kind. Like I
I've
feel I
tried
don't
to
know
talk.
why it is. Every time I listen to it, I can see the gears turn where you say we don't do drilling, and people convert that to we don't learn anything, we don't receive any direct instruction. And
Dude,
so
I don't.
I actually wanted to ask you more specifically then about that actually. What does direct instruction look like in your
Perfect.
coaching
Because
and
we can
what's its
actually use
role?
we can use the experience we both have with DeAndre to talk about this. Real quick, let me jump back and we'll jump back to this.
Sure.
So I didn't finish giving my example of poor focus. And this is what I
Sorry.
focus all the time. So being non-intentional. So we have the job clearing feet, get the knees inside, outside, pull the line, bottom player, feet to the middle, destabilize the butt to win. Something simple like that, right?
Yeah.
And you'll have a newer guy or even an advanced guy. He'll do the line drilling and all of a sudden he'll jump chest to chest and lock his hands. And I'll be like, what are you doing? He's like, well, it was just there. Well, what was there? We're not, and, oh, the guard pass. Are we guard passing? Well, I mean, in reality, it would be there. I'm like, that is not being intentional. So we are not doing this activity because we are trying to get better at chest to chest right now. We're trying to get close and stay close and maintain a specific environment for both players to experience something. So the intentionality would be just to do the task and just focus on the task and nothing else. What is there is irrelevant because let's imagine we were playing the game of line holding, right? You would have to be intentional about that. If you wanted to be a master, like let's say we both played a game where we had a 10-minute round and whoever stood in between the knees the longest wins. How the you don't do that without being intentional. You can't. So
Yeah.
anyway, that would be an example of someone being unintentional, and that creeps up in practice all the time. I hear
Yeah,
this all the
I've had this happen before. Like one particular like game that I like to run is maintaining an angle outside of the person's knees.
time.
And like the whole goal is you have to stay connected to your partner. You cannot move in chest, you cannot connect your chest to your partner, but you must maintain an angle at all times outside of their knees. And that's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
you
we do it
have to
too.
do. There's no passing, but the amount of times someone goes, "Oh, like the pass," I'm like, "That's not what we're doing.
Yeah,
That is not what we're
and
doing.
brother,
We are just maintaining an angle."
this is how you know it's a human problem because I don't care what country I'm in. If I'm talking to an 18-year-old kid or a 50-year-old man, this shit happens over and over and over again. I always have to correct it. Come on, guys. Um, but yeah, so the no instruction thing is silly. So the first bit that we do in our sport, the way I coach it anyway, is engagement first based on task and objective. So teaching people how to be intentional is sits at the foundation of my program. That is what will allow me to instruct you when I eventually give you something explicit to do. If I know that you can be intentional and through your engagements, I'm seeing an opportunity for my explicit information to affect you in a specific way, I will then use it. But if you can't listen to me saying, keep the feet off you, and you want to know how to do this sweet underhook you saw Joseph Chen do, if you can't keep the feet off you, you're never going to get there because
Yeah.
Joseph is one of the most intentional grapplers on the planet. So what you see in his movement is based on his ability to focus on what he's doing. So
Yeah.
I have to get you to be able to do that first, right? I say first is, whatever. I need to be able to get you to practice intentionally.
Yeah.
And so with DeAndre, like he already has all these skills, right? He can get to a point in the body. He can go feet, knees, hips. So if we sit around after class and we discuss different ways to pin the wrists at the limit of extension, whether it be to the body or to the ground, DeAndre's already in that space. He's
Yeah.
already there engaging in that action. So me giving him an explicit thing to do in that space is not going to harm him. It might even enhance his focus because he's already there doing work. So I just sprinkle a little salt on the dish and boom, we get a new flavor, right? And
Yeah,
so, but
it's specifically on that because I remember as well when you had that discussion with Dan Menasoya, he's like, "Well, how do you fix someone who's doing poorly with an arm triangle?" It's like you can still give some direct instruction, but it's like you would also then refine it through some sort of game. Like, is that fair to say?
yeah, yeah. So, it's actually a little nuanced topic than that. So basically, explicit information or like saying do this is really related to how much opportunity is there to do that.
Yeah,
So in an arm triangle, it is so constrained by the physical nature of the alignment that you have time to adjust and think and hold. And it is only bound by a few margins, and it doesn't really change. So if I say something like point your chest at the shoulder to enhance your squeeze, there's not much else you can do in that space.
yeah,
So that explicit level of instruction matches the demands of the environment.
yeah,
But if we're out at guard passing, which is high in variation, and I say something like, step one, you must step to the left. Step two, you must step to the right. Left. Step three, you must step in between the leaves to the left. That will never appear. The opportunity for that specific 1, 2, 3 sequence might never show up
yeah.
because the environment, the engagement is too variable.
Like the
So the
level of instruction needs
effectiveness,
to manage, like match, like the dynamics of the situation.
100%. If the dynamics of the situation is too large, explicit instruction has a limited effect, if any at
Yeah,
all. If the dynamics of the situation are very low and the change is very low, then explicit instruction could be used there because there's not much going on. So I typically talk about this as being discrete. So the more discrete a position is, the more explicit information has an effect. And we see this. And and when I say people, when I don't use instruction, I don't use explicit instruction. I don't use explicit instruction as a method.
yeah,
I use it as a tool within a larger method.
yeah.
So I know when to employ it. I know when to use it. But most in our sport, all we have is explicit instruction. We don't have any other methods. And so that's the main method that we've been relying on since the inception of our sport.
So then just going on from that then, because it's something I thought would be interesting, and this is probably like a more specific question is you have someone, John Dre, Gavin, whoever, they go out, they have competition. What does it look like with you analyzing matches and then starting to then debrief with them on what happened and then the progress towards like getting a better result next time? Like
We
I
can
know
use the
that's a
David
very
Stoyle match.
involved process in
No,
itself, but
no. I can use the David Stoyle match because that was really critical. There was a lot of things going on there. So um, DeAndre was new to entanglements, right? So when he came to Standard, he did not know anything about like passing guard work, submissions, like almost nothing. So like we had to get him in entanglements to experience them. So we were doing this stuff called leg confidence, and that's just a concept we use to talk about it. So leg confidence is basically standing in an entanglement, going through a hierarchical danger to safety pattern to try to go around the body in this thing, right? So we could say this is really dangerous, this is less dangerous, this is safe. And we would constrain them and play games within the space, and we called it leg confidence. So we had DeAndre walking into everybody's entanglement, walk right in, get in there and deal with it, right? And he was just crushing everybody. Like nobody could finish him, right? And so he had developed this grip where he would separate the feet and he would drive them forward and step behind the hamstrings. And so it's a pattern that stabilized. He was using it on everybody. We go to that tournament. We get David Stoyle. So he steps into him, puts him on his back, gets into the position that he got in training all the time, stretches his hamstrings. And then Stoyle changed his leg position, inverted, and got him in the backside hook, right?
yeah,
So we couldn't sleep. Dude. We were in Ohio, right? 8 hours away from home. We got to the hotel. We were just laying there in the fucking dark and silence. And then I just sit up and I'm like, bro, I can't. And he's like, I can't sleep either. So we got in the car and we drove back 8 hours to Maryland at 2 o'clock in the morning, talking about jiu-jitsu the entire fucking time, right? Like, inside position is not just when it's directly in between the knees. I'm like, and I was being like mean coach at the time. I'm like, what are you doing? We don't give inside position. You gave inside position, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, coach, it was working, man. I was working. And I was like, fuck. And then it's like, we realized that inside position is not just the contact point in between the knees. It's any space along the continuum of being in between the knees.
Yeah.
And so then we changed training relative to that new idea. We don't let feet exist near our center line, whether they're connected to us at all. So
Yeah.
we started changing all of our training to that. And then you saw the next few times he's fought Stoyle. If like I
Very
mean,
different sort of
immediately
result.
3 weeks later, hold you
Yeah.
down, pass your guard, mount you, take you back, submit you, right? And so we took one idea and it removed everything he had to worry about that we learned from that one tournament.
That's also really interesting as well. Just talking a little bit more meta about like I guess like tactics in the sport too, because I would say like at this stage, like that method to approaching passing full stop is probably the best best foundation towards passing because you're eliminating pretty much all possible threats by just not allowing any inside position, any sort of like not allowing their feet towards you in any capacity. And if you're always moving away from the feet, what offense can they generate from the guard? Because like the guard, the
No,
foundation of guard has been able to connect your legs to your opponent to generate offense.
that's how it functions. So that's why I created in my framework. Our job is to make and maintain connection and manage distance. That's the foundation of grappling. So if your position doesn't allow you to make and maintain connection, you cannot manage distance effectively. So it doesn't allow you to gain access to those later skills of isolation, immobilization, segmentation, and destabilization. If you can't connect, you cannot produce those skills.
Yeah.
So hand fighting is how we engage. Hand fighting is like the jab of boxing, right? So it's the jab of boxing for wrestling. So our
Yeah.
ability to remove connections to get close to you sits at the foundation of what we do. So, or what we do at Standard anyway. So all of our guard passers are exposed to this concept through training interventions that help us realize it as skill. So like, and DeAndre is just the best at it. Like everyone says it who trains with him. Like I cannot connect to you. I cannot destabilize you. I can't keep you away from my hips. It's very hard. And mostly what he's doing is just keeping the connections off and getting close, you know?
What I find really interesting with that as well is that, yes, that is his approach to passing because I felt it training with him. What's even more interesting is actually feeling that approach to him playing guard as well, where it's a similar idea of he will hand fight outside of the elbows constantly, taking away your ability again to interface with him, but he's interfacing with you.
Correct. And it's extra important there because you're carrying weight at this time. And so you are in a more fatigable position because not only do you have to stop forward progress, you have to carry the weight while doing it. So getting in positions where you can get out, get under, or get behind is critical. So all of our hand fights are to get out, get under, or get behind always. And DeAndre is he does not like to receive pressure. He likes to be, he's like a lead run. He's like a lead runner. He likes to be out front. So he's going to beat you at the initial engagement all the time. So he never has to have you pointed at him.
Yeah.
And so that's what he decides to focus on.
Now, would you, as a coach, is that something that you would identify as that something that DeAndre does, or would you consider that also to be a skill that then you can take and then also engineer, I guess, for other athletes to then take on like a similar skill like that?
So DeAndre is special as an athlete because
Yeah.
he's naturally well-rounded as a person. So like what I mean by that is he always checks all his boxes. His sleep is perfect, his diet is perfect, his hydration is perfect, his S&C is perfect. He doesn't miss ever. And so it's also expressed in his physical grappling. He passes,
Yeah.
he sweeps, he backtakes. You know what I mean? So when I met him and I saw him start grappling, I realized that he had the capacity to do everything. He only has one real weakness, right? So what I started to do is I was like, you can ask him. We sat down, had this conversation. I said to him, I was like, would you be willing to use my philosophy and show the world that it works? And he said, yes. So everything you see him do, but there's a few things that are his personal touch, of course, as any athlete
Yeah.
will have, are designed intentionally by me based on two things: how I see jiu-jitsu playing out and what I know to be strong about him. And so I took those two things together and I created like the DeAndre program. I mean, we've been running this DeAndre program for 6 years. Like my whole school has been under it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've literally really only designed practice for him. Everyone else kind of just falls under it. I mean, I have had to work with individual athletes along the way, but every centralized practice in the competitive room has been designed for him.
So that actually seems similar as well to what you'll see in other high level sports where it's like say we look at like Dagestani wrestling, it's like, one guy goes to a very, very high level, and then from there the training program sort of around him in his like local area then becomes based around like, okay, this athlete is very good at this like these particular skills, and so therefore we're going to sort of work like with that. Would you say that's like fair to say like similar thing with standard?
Yeah, because and I had to do it that way because you think about it. I got a guy who's giving me all of his energy, all of his time, all of his focus. He has a goal that I have too. We're both heading in the same direction. If I took focus away from that, I wouldn't be meeting him. He's giving me 100%. I need to give him 100%.
Yeah.
You know, like DeAndre says, like the mistake is saying athlete gives 50, coach gives 50. He's like, no, athlete gives 100, coach gives 100. And
Yeah.
so and then again, because he's the only guy that's maximizing his day, his week, his month, his year, and me too. So why would I take energy away from that and go work with someone who's giving me 20%? It's just going to be a failure on both sides. It's going to fail my goals, DeAndre's goals, and that student who's giving me 20% goals. So
So,
we have
so
room for the people that aren't DeAndre,
yeah.
but he's the focus because we're building something with Standard Jiu Jitsu, and he just is the leader of it. You know,
No, that makes sense. So with that then, so you have your method because you spoke about like, okay, you have your methodology for coaching. DeAndre, I want to use you so that way I can show my method of coaching, and then from there, like we build a program focused around him. How much does DeAndre influence your coaching, change your understanding of like coaching and the sport and things like that, that then refeeds
Com-
back into the program? Is that like a just a
completely.
continuous process all the
Yes,
time?
it can't just be me because uh, let's say I'm the top down, right? So I have a big, I'm ahead of him in coaching and grappling. I've been around longer, right? So I've got all this data, all this experience, all these ideas. I have to express them out onto an athlete. He accepted the challenge. We started doing work. Based on how he responds to me, my ideas, the training interventions, I have to shift to what's happening between us, just like he has to shift to me. So he listens, coach, what I do today. This is what you're doing. He does. I look at what he does. DeAndre, we're doing this tomorrow based on what you did today. Do you see what I mean? So it's not, it's
Yeah.
like I have the idea of where we're going and he knows where he wants to go. He lets me lead. He brings back data. I use his data to change my data. And then that's what we do. Nobody's really leading. It's just, I'm saying the idea of where we were going is kind of started with me just because that's my job. That's a coach's job. And then he leads with action. He has to step out there and actually do this shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He brings me shit back that I may never have seen. You know what I mean? Like, for example, when he couldn't strangle anybody, like DeAndre's like jacked, right? And his arms are a little bit short, and that kind of makes it hard. So when we saw this play out, I was like, dude, you have to use your legs, man. You got big ass strong legs. You
And he has
have
an
to submit.
he's amazing at the rear triangle from the back
Yeah.
there. So that's
And
so how much was that? So that rear triangle then that was like you look at like DeAndre's game, he needs to be stronger at finishing from the back with some sort of strangle because like we can't just rely on joint locks all the time. So was that something now with that, was it specifically okay, like you said like strangling with his legs? So you see that as like, okay, like this is a weakness in the sport, and this is an important area that he needs to be strong in his finishing from the back. So we need to move towards, say, triangles from the back or some variation of
yeah,
this.
it was very intentional. So we were doing EBIs at the time. And when we first started developing DeAndre, we were using the EBI style tournaments, the submission only. And our rule in standard was we're not going to overtime. We're going to empty the tank. We're going to finish that shit. We're not going to overtime. Unfortunately, he got some good guys, ended up in overtime. And he'd lost a few on to riding time and stuff like that
Yeah.
because he couldn't finish. And I was like watching this. I was like, dude, you need to use your legs, man. We're going to start getting your legs involved. And that was the whole thing. The whole idea was like this whole time we got our legs involved. So we did it from mount, we did it from side control, we did it from the back. And basically it's just we created environments to make DeAndre better at using his legs. It was intentional. Um, and I'm good at rear triangling. So I just took something I'm good at and I was like, well, I'm good at it. I understand this well. I can easily design games around it. I can put you through this right now because I already have developed a process in me. So if I already developed in me, we can just develop it in him. And it worked out. Like, and he took to it. And I think he took to it so strongly too because it was in his early years of development. I've noticed that athletes that develop something in their early years, it tends to really stick with them.
Yeah.
Um, not all, but I mean most really.
But yeah,
I guess
oftentimes,
that's
like it's yeah, like it's pretty impactful, sort of like on their long-term development.
yeah, it was huge for him, and he's extremely in for as big and as strong as his legs are. They're very dexterous. He's good with them.
So actually, just on that, around we were talking about like designing games around or tasks around developing this strangling from the back, and that was something that you were good at. So do you currently still like live train much, or
Me?
like yeah?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I
cool.
mean,
Because I had
unfortunately, this
heard I had heard that like you're like limited like in how much like actual live training that you can do. Is that correct?
yes and no. I mean, like I do
With
20 10-minute rounds a week.
okay. Okay,
I
so you
mean, so
still so
that
you train quite a lot then. Okay,
yeah.
I that I thought that you weren't training that much because of the spinal issues previously.
No, I'm not competing, and the risk is too high.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I have no, I mean, I have a lot of, I have like 5 herniated discs. I've got spinal stenosis. Like my spine is fucked, but it's not really affecting me. But the risk of injury is high. So if I land on my head, I could literally die. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's like, I mean, because I do not have a disc there anymore, and the ligament is gone. So it's like I'm unstable. So like even like if I wrestle up and I hit my head, like I'll feel it. So
yeah.
I have to be very careful with what I choose to engage with. But either way, I do. I do train for an hour. I do 5 10s 4 days a week, and I do 2 days of strength conditioning. This year has been hell. This bicep surgery has not gone well. Like I rehabbed it.
Oh
I
yes,
got
I
back in.
forgot about this. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, I ruptured my bicep in May. And then like that took me out, dude. It was the worst surgery ever. Um, I did all the rehab, did what I was supposed to do. I got back into training earlier this year, retore it 3 weeks in. Like I wasn't
Oh
even doing
no.
anything. I was training with a 14-year-old kid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was a light guy. It was like my fourth round of the night. And I don't know what happened, man. It just I couldn't flex it. Went to the doctor. He's like, let's put an MRI on it, see what's going on. And I he's like, yo, you retore it. So now I'm back in rehab again. So that's been frustrating.
Oh,
Um,
because where I was going with this question, but I guess like it's still relevant now then with you dealing with the bicep injury. So as a coach, you talked about before, like coaches have knowledge about things, and then say for example, you used your experience with like different types of triangles in different situations. What do you do now outside of I guess like looking at athletes in the room with developing more knowledge about jiu-jitsu?
I watch a lot of grappling. Like I watch, I mean, I'm staring at grappling all day long, pretty much. And so it's almost hard to draw the line between what I'm seeing that's affecting me and what I'm
Yeah,
learning because I feel like it's happening constantly.
yeah,
Like I feel like the biggest hole I have in my grappling knowledge, if I really feel like I have a hole, is like stand up stuff. So there are some engagements in stand up that I'm still trying to understand a little bit better. But I feel like I haven't seen anything happen in the last 15 years that's like kind of made me go, oh, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, because I'm engaged with it so much. It's not like I'm not doing anything else. But I think a lot of my knowledge has come from just watching my grapplers, really, like watching how their engagements play out, watching how different body types tend to move in one direction versus another. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't watch anything other than my grapplers and competitive grappling. I literally that's what I watch, you know. And of course,
So
the
with
hate
that,
watching on Instagram, but that's about it.
so with that, because you said developing your understanding of your knowledge about like the standing game a little bit more, or the standing grappling more. Are you looking to many things outside of jiu-jitsu?
Yeah,
When you're
yeah,
talking about looking at like a high level, because like I remember at the start you talked about you're less concerned about rule sets because it's more about understanding just general body mechanics, and then we send them through a filter.
yes. So I feel like I'm sensitive to watching which athletes are rule set centric and which athletes are physically centric, like who understand the grappling more deeply. And I choose to look at the athletes that I feel like ignore their sport. I know that sounds kind of crazy,
No, no,
but you
it
can,
actually makes a lot of sense. You blew my mind a little bit actually, because I was like, wow, I never thought about looking at like, say, for example, studying wrestlers. Because like Jordan Burroughs is someone people talk about his double leg, but like later in his career, he's become a wrestler that is very focused on using the rule set to win his matches. And so then
yeah,
he sort of moves in a direction away from like maybe what you would study versus like
right,
another high level wrestler like uh Yazdani. Yazdani
yes,
hasn't really changed into becoming a rules focused wrestler. He's very much like very focused on working very particular skills and actually like employing
Yeah.
those skills rather than trying to win with the rule set. Like he wants to put guys down.
Yeah. And I think that's why he had to take some losses. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I kind of, so I had this argument with Lloyd one time. It was funny. Lloyd, we were all sitting around and he said, you are facing the best guard player in the world. You go out there, you have to win this match. How do you win this match? He's like, and then Andres Brunowskis raised his hand. He's like, double pull. And Lloyd's like, all right, double pull. What if no one ever comes up? And Andres goes, it's going to be the most boring match anyone's ever seen. So Andres, A plus, you got the study question right. I raised my hand. He's like, Greg, what would you do? I'm like, I'd get up and try to pass that dude's guard. He's like, well, he's the best guard player in the world. No one's ever passed his guard. I was like, and when I do it, I will be the best guard passer in the world. Like, that's why you don't understand anything, Shorty. That's why you're always having trouble, blah, blah, blah. But for me, like, yeah, I love winning. And I think the intention is to win the match. I mean, that's really why we go out there. But it's also to express yourself. And
Yeah.
I have a bias towards the beautiful expression of the thing that we do. And by beautiful, I don't care about the aesthetic. I mean, its effectiveness. There are two wrestlers that people are watching like crazy now, the Saitiev brothers, Adam and Buvaisar. So I found a random Russian YouTube channel in like 2012. And that's what put me onto them. It was all in Cyrillic, couldn't even read it. But I saw this guy, and I literally, within like 10 minutes of watching him, I was like, oh, this is the best grappler that's ever lived. Like, this dude is doing things with his body, and he's so efficient, like, it's unreal. And so I'll watch him over anybody else. I don't care if I mean, he's only ever lost twice, but yeah, that's the type of grappler that I look for.
This is something that like, and this is, I guess, when you get into like different like flavors of grappling as well, is that I think oftentimes, and I think it like hopefully gets expressed like actually does get expressed in, the grappling I do and the grappling I teach, but I, let's do the grappling that we want to be seen doing. Like for
I love
example, no one ever wants to watch a grappler have someone threaten him with a technique and he runs away.
brutal,
like like yes, we
brutal.
talk about escapes, we might talk about escapes in the sense of like, okay, we escape mount, but really what we're talking about is we're not talking about escapes. It's like we want to be doing counters. Everything needs to be a counter. Like we want to be like, and we want to go out and like actually do like, we want to turn up and actually do grappling.
Yeah, so we have a culture. So we've dealt with that a bit with our culture. We don't back up. And what I mean, we don't flee. So every game that's designed, every single one is, and especially when it comes to like a specific development, is zero sum. What's good for me is bad for you. What's good for you is bad for me. And I'm going to stay in the fire while I find it. So like we don't like if you watch DeAndre, he doesn't flee. He doesn't flee. There is not a single standard athlete that you'll ever see turn around and run from any submission, any engagement, any entanglement. You just won't see it. And if you do see a strong defensive reaction or any type of negation going on, they're immediately back in the fight going again. They don't. And we culturally do this. We talk about it. We situate our practices around it. We praise it because, man, we ultimately want to be good grapplers at the end of the day, not just winners. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I guess the sort of like fantasy sort of analogy to that is like Spartans coming back on their shield.
Yeah, man, because it's supposed to be fun. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
You did. We
like,
we don't we didn't get into jiu-jitsu because we thought I want to win worlds by an advantage.
no way, man. Like, I mean, yeah, we want to win. That's what competition is for. Competition is for winning. But it's also for kind of telling the world who you are. You're up there in front of people. You're showing people your skills. You're showing people your training. This is where we are. Let's go. And so, yeah, I think highly effective, highly efficient jiu-jitsu is the mark, and we should train towards it.
Well, with that, I actually think that's a really nice note to sort of end the discussion on. Thank you very much, Greg, for today. Yeah, I've been super keen to talk to you because we've seen each other like at a lot of like different competitions and things like that over the years. Getting to train with DeAndre, and I think like yeah, you're doing great things in the sport. So it's like just good to get like more of your insights about coaching and about the sport.
Well, thanks, man. I feel like it was a great conversation. I really the flow of it. It was about coaching. It was about jiu-jitsu. That's what I want to talk about.
I think this is
I,
what
I
people actually want to listen to for sure.
the truth is, man, I never wanted to be the guy like in anything. I even told the boys, I was like, when I started doing this shit, I was like, man, I'm gonna go out there and make a lot of noise so we can get more opportunities. And that was the whole original idea. And then I ended up pigeonholing myself into this like eco guy bullshit, which it sucks. But I answered the call. I got a job
Hey,
to
it
do.
worked. It worked. But no, it was really good to have this conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you.